Okay, so continuing on from the previous lecture, from here on we look at Kennedy's response, and they have actually chosen to respond with the naval blockade. And so for Soviet Union, they also have a response to actually what Kennedy did. And Soviet Union and Cuba, they were angry at the blockade, obviously. And so for Khrushchev, he sees it as an illegal act of war, and he assured that the Soviet Union will continue to support Cuba. So he assured Castro that he will continue to support him. And the Soviet forces in Cuba were placed on high alert, and secret instructions were given to use nuclear missiles if the US forces were to invade. And Castro himself also mobilized the Cuban army and declared to die fighting. So at this point in time, during this naval blockade, the world was actually on the brink of a full-scale nuclear war. Okay, and the tension was definitely there. No side actually wants to back down. And if you remember, for Kennedy, actually, he didn't really have any other options. After he has declared the naval blockade, he cannot step down, otherwise he would appear to be weak, and it would actually cause USA's prestige to be, be affected lah. So therefore, at this point in time, he really cannot do anything about it. So with respect to the first question that we actually that we had looked at, the USA was responsible for increasing tensions during the Cuban Missile Crisis. How far do you agree? So you can also discuss about Soviet Union's response here to answer this question. Okay, how Soviet Union were actually also responsible for increasing the tensions. It wasn't just the USA. Also, again, just a reminder: take note that the question is phrased as during the Cuban Missile Crisis. If you want to mention anything outside of when the Cuban Missile Crisis are outside of the 13 days, like USA's historical relationship, it must link it back to the things that were happening during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that's how you should be dealing with this question. Okay, so actually I'm more or less done with this part. I should have spoken faster in the previous lecture and put everything into one. But never mind. So to sum up, all right, if you look at it chronologically about the events that actually took place and how it has happened, starting from 16 October when the Kennedy actually was informed of this, and how he actually considered what to do, and eventually to him making a decision about the naval blockade on the 22nd of October, and then finally you have also Soviet Union actually responding to the naval blockade, and of course being pissed off and wanting to um, be more, do something about it. And at this whole point in time, it is also important to take note that this is actually the reasons that make up why the Soviet Union and the USA almost went to the brink of nuclear war over Cuba. It is not because of the actions that were being taken, but it was actually more of a lack of communication. Okay, it's also charismatic. It was also characteristic of the Cold War, where there was hardly any communication, and it was all about trying to interpret each other's actions and see what they're going to do. And again, let me emphasize this: at this point in time, for Kennedy and Khrushchev, there was hardly, and I don't think there were any communications that took place between the two of them at all. Kennedy didn't pick up the phone and ask, "Hey, Khrushchev, bro, what are you doing? Why you put the missiles in my backyard?" Okay, and course, Khrushchev didn't call Kennedy to say, "Hey, I'm putting, missiles in your backyard because you put missiles in mine first." Right? So that didn't happen. So the lack of communication was one of the characteristics of this Cuban Missile Crisis. Chronologically, the crisis has not ended yet up to this point. We will move on to the third part of the lecture, where you will actually see the end to the lecture and how end of the crisis, and how this was actually resolved between the two of them, and what is the impact of this Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, it's a bit strange that it's being broken up like this lah. So because actually you will still be talking about what is happening in the middle of the crisis and actually how it ends. Okay, but we shall leave that to the next lecture then.